Buenos dias, buenos tardes, good evening, everybody. It's your main man, Shannon. Welcome to the Car Chronicles, the Road Trip. And on today's episode of the Car Chronicles, I welcome a good friend of mine. He is a husband, a father, a brother, a community leader, an activist. I used to refer to him as FF, Fat Filipino, and then he lost a bunch of weight and I called him FFF. But he is a servant leader, a guy that I'm glad to call friend, the first Filipino mayor of the city of Lakewood, my good friend Ariel Pe. Ari, welcome to the road trip.
What's up there, Big Shannon? How are you?
Excellent, excellent. It is a joy to have you on. As I was thinking about this, we were talking about you on the last episode, Jen Garcia and I, because you were pivotal in a lot of the stuff we both do today. Ari, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell the people about yourself, because I know you.
Just a regular person, man, enjoying the back nine of my life. No, no, but thank you. Thanks, first of all, for having me on today. Super stoked. I am a person that's very blessed to be around a lot of amazing people like yourself, Shannon, and your family, and Jen Garcia's, and the Ungs, the Areolas, and my whole OSG crew, the Sosas, even Dizzle and the crew. We have a really hefty crew. I'm very blessed to be surrounded by amazing people. On top of that, very blessed to have a lot of mentors and people that are in leaderships that I can kind of pull a lot of cues from to kind of like learn the game. But um, my story is pretty simple. I'm a kid from Lakewood. Just like any kid in Lakewood, you grow up in Lakewood and Long Beach. You ride bikes, you surf, you ride dirt bikes, you kind of hang out. You like cars, you're a wrench, you hang out in the garage. That's my deal, man. But I'm super blessed to have still an amazing life in the city of Lakewood, still live in Lakewood, raising my daughter in Lakewood now. Coming from a very athletic background, seeing a lot of those traits being instilled in her, but also making it fun, So growing up in the city of Lakewood has always been fun. I've been blessed. My parents are still around. They are still very activated. They allowed me to be a kid in Lakewood, and then Lakewood provided me with all the tools to be a kid in Lakewood, to develop to who I am and what I do today. So when I look back, my foundation, it's funny. I just went to sidebar. I went to a funeral last week from a good friend of mine, one of the kids I grew up with since like second grade, the Robbins family. And I look back and at the funeral, unfortunately, when it comes to funerals, it's the only time you see families you haven't seen in so long. But I look at these families, and these are the families that shaped me when I was little, like five or six different families, right? Because out of technology, we just hung out with each other, and whether it was, church or whether it was sports or baseball or it was football, I just look back and I was blessed to have an amazing childhood and have the diversity with all these other families and grow up in these households and vice versa for these kids to grow up, my buddies to grow up in my household too. So um, just a kid from Lakewood, just doing my thing and having fun, and been able to take some big steps, with some pretty, with a unplanned, trajectory, right? I come from a Filipino, and I was told that you got to be a nurse, and that wasn't happening in my life. I failed everything and anything, whether it was nurse, X-ray tech. I failed like 10 majors within a sub major, and then I found business, and then I found an amazing career in marketing and strategic branding, global branding, and then parlayed out and became a community servant. Didn't see myself as a community leader, but as a servant, you volunteer because that's how we grew up. I'm Filipino, I'm Catholic. That's what we do. We volunteer. We help everybody. We help everybody. That's what we do. But I was able to, find like these organizations were able to connect the dots with, nonprofits and be able to take my marketing, my personality, my friendships, my cultures to the next level to make a difference in the bigger part of this community.
Ari, it's interesting because I think when you look at and it's funny, guys. Those of you that know me, that one of my best friends on the earth is a community leader, but he spent time in government, and I'm openly anti-government. Like it's right
Yeah.
here. Like I'm uncomfortably anti-government with
Yeah.
some of these guys, and so when you look at kind of what Ari's done. Ari, tell them a little bit about your corporate background because I don't think a lot of people know that you spent time in the corporate space.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time in the corporate space, like anything, you go to school, you get a corporate job, and then selfishly enough, I was kind of like, okay, what do I do want to do in the corporate life, right? So I took a step back and kind of said, what do I like to do, right? So I broke it down to like basics. Let's take the money out of it. Like, what did I enjoy? What did I find that was fun? Like I like action sports, I like music, I like street culture, a little bit of art, and that's who I am. That's what shaped me, growing up here in Lakewood, and then was able to graduate college with a business admin degree with a minor in marketing, and then from there be able to land jobs in the, I would call it the action sports sector is what I did. So I had a pretty long stint at Vans, the shoe company, years ago, which was an amazing, in your face, hard knocks, learning. You have books, you have your book in marketing at college, and you get into the game, and then I wouldn't say it's a whole new game, but it's very, very different. There's things that you can get from both sides of the spectrum of from the let's call it the academia versus like real life experience. But I truly believe you need a balance of both to really understand the bigger picture. From there, you know, I gosh, I'll say coming on 15 years ago, I had my daughter. My wife and I, my amazing wife and I, Carmina, had a daughter, and I opted out of corporate America. So because in that life it was a lot of run and gun, like we travel, we move, we trade shows, we sail, there's always events going, it's nonstop, out the door. Let's go, let's make it happen. So it was a lot for my wife and a lot, for my little one. And I didn't want to miss because we only have one. So I don't want to miss a minute of her life. So, blessed enough, I got the blessing to like, okay, let's parlay out of corporate big America, but I had an amazing stint. I worked with still close with Steve Van Doren, the family that started Van Shoe Company. I worked with the original Art Ruka guys, Brad Blankenship for a while. I was vice president of Lucky 13 Apparel for a good term. So I had a really good run in strategic, apparel branding. So it was good. It's corporate life, like anything.
It's interesting, guys, because those of you that hear Ari talk about this, I mean, it kind of mirrored those of you that listened to the previous episode with Jen Garcia and some of the things that she talked about and the impact of, living a life that's not 100% yours, the impact that it'll have on your family downstream. I was talking to a married couple about this recently that, I missed Shannon Jr.'s first steps because I think I was like on a business trip in Arizona and I missed his first words because I was in Texas for an extended period of time. And so, and then those jobs I got laid off from.
Yeah,
So look at that. They didn't
yeah,
care that I missed those things. So when you
yeah,
when you really start paying attention to it,
yeah,
Ari was able to he was blessed enough to do the things that he liked to do.
yeah,
I think it was, there's a saying that, if you do what you like to do, you'll never work a day in your life.
yeah,
And so, I think a lot of us have been able to, um, his thing was serving his community. So he's been able to kind of parlay a lot of those relationships. Ari, will you talk to them about your transition into city government? Because, look, I'll tell you guys, it's when he said to us, because he didn't just say it to me, he said it to a bunch of us. It was like, we have like a small crew. It's like 6 families. We hang out together. He was like, I think I'm going to run for city council. And we were like, what are you talking about? Like,
yeah,
you,
yeah,
huh? And
yeah.
he was like, yeah. So, like, a bunch of us, we went and knocked on doors and put up yard
Yeah.
signs and did all of that. And then he won.
Yeah.
But it was a dream of his that he had to serve his community selflessly. Ari, talk to them about that because I think that's how people know you today.
Yeah, I'll take a test. Let me check you on that one. It was never a dream because I am not a politician. That's for one thing. You know, I am a people person, but it's one of those things where you know, you know, it was a transition for me, right? Like you go to leaving corporate America, and then you go to trying to find your niche, and I became an entrepreneur, right? And then, the entrepreneur life, it's a grind, it's a hustle every day. You got to make it, you know. My wife's a school teacher. She busts her butt. Like, how do I got to keep up on my end? What do I got to do? Like, how hard do I got to hustle? Right. So it's kind of like athletics, right? It's like hell week every day and trying to figure problems out. So it was one of those things where we parlayed from doing that and scaling my hobby in the garage. I had a t-shirt printing business as a hobby, right? To because any kid in Lakewood and Long Beach who want to start a clothing line and be rich and do one of these. And oh man, I got paid more. I figured out really quick that I got paid more doing work for other people than trying to launch my own stuff. I'm like, hell, screw my own stuff. I'm gonna get paid, right? Because you got a mortgage, you got bills, you got car payments, you got athletics. So, it was one of those things where as a business owner, you start thinking of marketing, sales, and you kind of figure, okay, how do I gotta reach out to this a network to expand my network to propagate my business, right? So for me, I was blessed enough to come across some old friends randomly at a Lakewood car show. It was Brenda Trigo and Tanya Whiteleather. They approached me and they go, "Hey, you need to join our Rotary Club." And I'm like, "Rotary Club? What the hell is that?" I was thinking cars, right? Like rotary cars and and stuff like that. But because I was at a car show, and he says, "No, come see me, meet me here at this meeting on a Thursday for lunch and let's talk." And then I walked in this meeting and I was like, whoa, like it was people that did the same thing that I do, but at a different level. I'm a community person. Like we volunteer at church, we have like feed the homeless program for 30 plus years. We give back, we help everybody we know. I just had like again going back to being Filipino and Catholic, you just help and give no matter what. So it was I didn't realize how much of the Rotary Service Above Self motto was in my DNA as a person, right? And in my family too, like my mom and dad, because that's who they were. They were like the little league parents, but they were the quiet ones, but they were always active. They always volunteered. They always helped. So it was one of those things that we just did. Like, hey, we got to volunteer. Let's go. So for me, I got part of the Lakewood Rotary Club, and then that's when like it started to kind of like excel because I'm the type of person when I get into something, I get into something, right? Next thing you know, I'm the president in like 4 years, right? I'm like, whoa, now you're leading an organization that's giving back, right? And then the cool thing is when you look at like giving back, whether it's Rotary or anything I do in my life, I've been able to give back locally. I've been able to give back to my city. I've been able to give back to the region. And then with Rotary, now you give back to the state, then you give back internationally, like, and then globally, right? Like, so I've been able to touch every sector of that giving back level. And that's an amazing feeling because I'm part of something like that. Like, that's like, it was never a bucket list, but to be part of something like that, it was huge. So when I joined the Rotary, then Rotary Club, if no one doesn't know what the Rotary Club is, it's a service organization, right? You raise money and then you give it back to the community, whether it's donating money to the Boy Scouts, donating money to nonprofits, whether it's doing community service work. It's just like-minded individuals that are together. And with that, you have different leaders, you have presidents, you have CEOs, you have small business owners, all, coming together to break bread at lunch, but egos and titles are left at the door. It was all about giving back, but able to use your networking and connections to help to get things done. So I met a lot of people through there. So when we talk about my civic life started when I was born, but I was able to see it deeper as I got older, but really got to see it at a bigger level when I joined the Rotary Club, where I could touch someone's life internationally or in the globe. That's when I saw like a really like, whoa, this is a big deal. And then from there, one organization tells another organization, you start collaborating, you start having marketing conversations, and hey, join my board. Next thing you know, I'm part of 7 boards. And then everything from I led the Chamber of Commerce for 2 years, the YMCA for 2 years, Pathways, I was on there, Long Beach City College Foundation Board, St. Joseph High School. I mean, I can go like I was appointed to the California Board of Accountancy by the Emeritus Speaker Anthony Rendon. I can go off on numbers, but blessed to have those opportunities. But you still have to step up, right? You can't just, hey, let me put my name down and go. You still have to go to meetings. So it was a grind, I was 7 boards. That's almost seven. That's like almost an extra 14 meetings a month on things. Plus you have to work, plus you have to kind of like do your company and kind of make that all work, which leads me into my civic life where At one point in time, I'll remember vividly, being a person in the community that's very, very activated. I'll never forget it. It was a car show. I was the board chair. We revamped the board after 2 years. I was on my 2 years as the board chair for the Chamber of Commerce. We were at a car show, and we had Congresswoman Linda Sanchez there. We had then, then Emeritus Speaker Anthony Rendon there. We had, I think, Senator Bob Archuleta there. We had Todd Rogers, Steve Croft there. And then we had a couple other community members. I forget who was there, but I just do remember was um, I introduced myself to, Speaker Anthony Rendon, and I introduced myself to, Congresswoman Sanchez. And I said, hey, my name is Ari, thanks for being here. We truly appreciate you coming here, spending your time on a Saturday. And then I'm the board chair of, the Greater Lakewood Chamber of Commerce. And then one of the council members said, yeah, but he's also on the hospital board. He's also on YMCA. He's also Rotary. It was interesting to see how people finished my story for me, or told, they were like almost like my ambassadors of saying, hey, he does this, this, and this, not just this. And it wasn't like I was telling them to say that. It was more of like proof is in the pudding, right? You got to be a man of action, right? Like people will see the work you do once you put the work in. So, which led me to my, coming down, going down that route, which I, as a former elected leader, I got the tap on the shoulder. I got the tap from then Mayor Steve Croft. He goes, hey, you need to come have coffee. And he goes, hey, and we had a conversation, right? And then we had a conversation and we talked. And he goes, I go, what do you mean? Like, he goes, you should run for city council. Like, what are you talking about? I said, you're crazy. Give me some coffee. And he just starts laughing. He goes, no, I'm serious. And I go, why? He goes, I am not a politician. Then he pointed at me and he goes, that's exactly why. Then he goes, you live here, you give back, you're doing this for love. Your parents still live here, your family's here. Why wouldn't you do this? You know everybody, you're in the community, you do things, and you're making a difference. Why wouldn't you do this? I'm like, oh. So, like anything, I like what I'm supposed to do, came home, told the boss, my wife, and she just starts laughing at me, right? She's like, what are you gonna run for city council? I don't know. Mayor Steve Croft said I should run for city council. But you know what? It was a blessing because, he got word that one other former colleague of ours, wasn't running, and there was going to be an open seat. And then I spoke to all council members except for one. I sat down, I called them all, and had coffee with all of them. And bless his soul, Joe Escobar,
Former
the
mayor.
former mayor, always mayor of Lakewood, mentored me. And I had a lot of mentors in this process, right? And I had coffee with everybody. Like I had coffee with Ron Piazza, Steve Croft, Todd Rogers, Joe Escobar, Diane Du Bois, right? And we sat and had coffee. And they just told me, yeah, they gave me the pros and cons of the whole thing, right? And what was interesting to me is when I was sitting with Ron Piazza, he told me, well, Ari, you're a big person in the community right now. You might have a louder voice there. And then when you get on council, you might not have a loud voice because there's some that you have to kind of play the game and kind of figure out when you can do your voice to get things done, And but he gave me the pros and cons, which was super fair, right? And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Now, let me add something real quick, Ari, because for those of you that don't live in the area, like Ari is talking about people that are not just involved in the city, but involved in the county and have
Yeah.
impactful city. I mean, Ron Piazza he owns like all of the McDonald's in
Yep.
3 surrounding cities.
Yep.
So figure that out. All of the
Yeah.
McDonald's and I think Domino's Pizza, right?
No, just all
And
McDonald's. He's a McDonald's guy.
doesn't he own the Domino's Pizza in
No, no, that's somebody else.
ah, well, he owns all
Yeah.
he owns a McDonald's. I live in Compton. He owns a McDonald's, the 2 McDonald's here.
Yeah.
so, so
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
in like
It's
3 of the
fair.
surrounding cities, he owns all the
Yeah.
McDonald's.
Yeah.
Ari met with people that were involved in the city when the city was incorporated. Joe Escobar lived in the city when the city was incorporated, right after
Uh,
World War
yeah.
II. But
Yeah.
rest in peace. Diane, same thing. I think she said she moved in the city in like 1958.
Yeah.
So you start looking at this, guys, and he's telling you that he took the time to build relationships and have
Yeah.
mentors with people that
Yeah.
were invested in the same thing that he was invested in. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I didn't know it was invested. That was what I did, right? And it was almost like a blessing just for anyone to have a conversation with me, right? It's like just to share knowledge and kind of share their thought with me, and you listen, right? It's like school, like you listen and you kind of see how the city is ran, and then when I tapped me on the shoulder, we took a stand and said, okay, let's run a campaign. But I told my wife, if I'm not doing this, we have to do this. My mom and dad have to be, my friends have to be involved. We ought to do this because it's not about me. It's about us and the community and everybody around us. When we ran in 2019, we ran a super successful, campaign, an at-large campaign, and we had some really solid numbers, and we did well, and was able to get on city council. Like anything, I joined. No one wanted to join anything, so I joined everything. And now, in my 4-year term, I was able to be the president of the Gateways Council of Governments, which is 24 cities and I think 11 incorporated cities in Southeast LA County, which is a pretty big deal because I was the first AAPI to ever lead that organization, which is a big deal, right? And then on top of that, I was vice president of the League of California Cities LA division, which is a pretty big deal, So to be able to be part of Lakewood, because Lakewood has such a historic spot not public, in the public sector, right? Because Lakewood was the first contract cities. You know, the Lakewood plan was the layout for suburb of America, right? To look at how you want to run your cities, whether you do contract or you do private.
Explain to them what contract cities are, because I
Well,
think a lot of folks won't know.
contract cities means is that as when we incorporated the city and said we're going to have a police department, we built the buildings, but we said LASD, we're going to pay you to work our city. We don't own the police. We pay them. They're the biggest ticket on our budget, right? So it all depends on how your cities are ran. Some cities like Long Beach is big enough they can host their own city. They can host their own police station and police officers and everything that goes with it, like payroll and all that goes with it. For us, for our little city of 7 square miles and 82,000 people, we said, okay, back then they said, hey, this works for us. We're going to contract. We're just going to pay you. You're going to charge us and we're going to pay you. So we were the very first contract city. And there's about 5 other cities that joined us very, very early on. And the formula in our city works.
And
Yeah,
Compton's a contract city.
yes, Compton is a contract city, yes.
Now, Compton's a contract city, and unlike Lakewood, because we had a shady police force. So then Compton became a contract city as
Yeah.
a result of an incompetent police force. But I digress. But the things that Ari's telling you, I mean, this is why it's important. If you want to be part of the solution, you have to really be part of the solution. I mean, there was
Yeah.
things that Ari brought, and he'll never. It's funny. I had a chance to speak on last week Thursday to the Lakewood Leadership Academy, and it's a bunch of local business owners and leaders. Ari, that was like a vision that Ari helped birth with the help of others in the city.
Yeah.
And when he talks about Vans, not only did he work at Vans, but he had a relationship where they donated shoes to schools and things of that
Yeah.
nature. So there's
Yeah.
there's things that come along with that.
Yeah.
Um, but one thing that always, and again, he doesn't talk about. Jen talked about it, and I would really, some of you go back and watch that podcast or that episode. Um, he talked about the importance of not just him going out and reaching out to people, but people being invested enough in him to give him information.
Yeah.
And that's what Ari's done to the bulk of us. My first entree into the YMCA occurred on October 30th, 2015. And the greatest YMCA in all the land.
On the
They
land.
were completely redoing the Y. And
Yeah.
I met Ari. We connected then. Um, and a year later, I'm on the board. But I'm going to share this. And Ari probably doesn't even remember this. But Ari and I met on uh, the 2nd of November at 11 a.m. at a Starbucks. And again, so I've been out of work for like 9 months, 10 months by this point, and we're building what we know now as Helping Hands, Giving Hope.
Yeah.
I had some bright ideas about what I thought I would do. I mean, I think when I first started this idea with Shannon's Ministries, I thought I would go out and I would be like this global evangelist,
Yeah.
speaking to people all over the place. And
Yeah.
that was great, and it was a great idea, but boy, was I wrong. I mean, I still, I probably do more speaking engagements now than I ever did back then, but
Yeah.
it's kind of on my terms now on how I want to do it. But he talked to me about the importance of just having a plan and understanding like the tastemakers and your early adopters and your followers.
Yeah.
Like you can't even you probably won't even be able to see this, but like these are the notes that I took in that meeting. But it
Crazy.
was it was him being willing to kind of talk to me early on and share with me some of his life's experiences that help kind of shape what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
what he didn't say is that, he sat on, we sat on like three boards together. We sat on
Yeah.
the board of, um, during my time as being chairman of the YMCA board, he was a key component of that board. We sat on the Mills on Wheels board together.
Yeah.
Um, he's involved in Helping Hands, Giving Hope. And so,
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time that it's important to understand who you're around and to
Yeah.
place yourself around people that kind of share your vision and share your
Yeah.
desire to serve others.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, service for them will be very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And hanging out with you will be very uncomfortable because you're people of service.
Yeah.
And I always talk about that with Ari is that, Ari's a political leader that very rarely just showed up for the photo op. Like he wasn't a guy that just showed up and was like, let me take the picture and leave.
No.
So Ari, talk to us about that campaign process and the early obstacles. So Ari's the former mayor of Lakewood because he's not the mayor now, and I think it's important that people understand
Yeah.
the most recent campaign process and the fallout
Yeah.
from that, and then what came
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah. So being blessed to have marketing on my side and having a lot of experience there, the campaigning process wasn't like it wasn't rocket science because I was privy to all the information of what had to happen and knew what to happen. But there was things that I wasn't like I'd never had experiences like raising money and asking money from my friends, right? Like that was a whole new ordeal, right? But like campaign process, and one thing for me, like, I always go back to like my roots, right? It's all about integrity, it's all about authenticity, right? You got to be real. You got to be real to the game. You got to get the respect of your friends. If your friends make fun of you, and then they kick you when you're down, that means you have some real friends because they're the ones that are going to laugh with you, they're going to cry with you, and they're going to pick you up, right? And it's one of those things where when you look back and like all the friends I forged in the process of anything I do, I've been blessed. So in the campaign process, it's a boilerplate. But the hardest part for that for me was talking about myself because I campaign about everything and action. I campaign about like doing good. Let's do this. Let's do this together. Let's all come together. But to talk about myself, that was really, really hard. And bless his soul, Ed Aranda was my first campaign manager. Unfortunately, he had passed away due to some health issues, but he goes, bro, you got 90 days to brag about yourself. It's time. Do you want this? I go, I want it because he goes, you should want this because you can make a difference in this community. So that was the hardest part for me to get over that hump. But the campaigning process wasn't, you know, it wasn't it wasn't like rocket science. It's very public narrative. It's about, messaging. It's about getting in front of people. It's about having conversations. It's about being accessible, and it's about and be able to execute against that. So strategic marketing campaign, online media, right? You had your Facebook, your Instagrams, you had your phone, your your phone calls, to everybody. You knocked on doors. We had mailers that went out. You had to have events to bring people together to raise money. Then you had to raise money. So, that was the hardest part was calling my friends and asking for money. I'm like, damn, I hated it, but it was part of it. And it's one of those things where if there's anything that I learned in this whole process was making yourself being uncomfortable. Because if you keep asking, your friend's gonna say no, no, no. It's okay. It's okay if they say no. It is what it is. But but there's ones that believe like that will give when they can. Everybody's situation is different. So, but I was blessed. We did well. So 2019, we raised, we won, and it did my 4 years, and we just went into another campaign, and I lost. So we blew it out of water campaign wise. Like I've never, I felt like honestly, I don't know what it feels like, but I felt like I was running for a Senate or assembly. The only thing I didn't do were TV commercials, right? But there's a lot of things that happen in the city that we had to change, geographically. So when I ran my first campaign, we were at large, so everybody got to vote. This last campaign, we went into districts. Instead of having 85, 82,000 people look at who I was, now I'm down to 16,000 people in my immediate area, which there's pros and cons to that, right? So, but long story short, you know, I had I was blessed with an amazing staff at the city council. I made it fun. The Lakewood Leadership Academy was an amazing, that was a thought I had when I first got in because I told myself, who are the next ones after me? We need to start grooming them just to see if they're even open to this. We're not saying, hey, you should run. Let's just groom them and see who comes out of this and kind of give them the opportunity to kind of like dig in deep and see if public policy is a direction they want to go into. So, and another thing that people forget during the pandemic, I don't know if you remember, Shannon, we ran a smile campaign. Remember the buttons and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
smile and the happy face? We did Lakewood with a smile because during the pandemic, everybody was so bummed out. Everybody was mad, right? So I said, let's run a smile campaign. We made like 5,000 buttons. We had t-shirts and hats go out. It just had Lakewood and it was a smile. And all it was is to have someone see that and say, hey, you know what? Let me smile for 20 seconds because it's a really bummer right now during the pandemic. Yeah, I totally forgot about that one. But that was it.
And
That was a fun campaign we did.
I learned something though crucially important as I during this last campaign, because we did door knock. We did door knocks. And again, I mean, look, it's those of you that know me. It's like Ari's my boy, so I ride for him, and so I go knock on this door, and I know the people are home because I saw the person look out the window when she saw me walk up the driveway. And look, guys, look, I wanted to appeal to the lighter crowd, so look, I wore like a college sweatshirt and knock on the door. Nobody comes.
Yeah.
So then my wife goes, well, let me go knock on the door. So she knocks on the door. Lady comes, opens the door. And then I run up and I'm like, hey, I want to talk to you. And so the lady says this to me. I'll never forget. So she goes, well, I'm aware of Ari. And I said, well, I talked to her about the Lakewood Leadership Academy. I talked to her about vans and bringing stuff to the school and, a ton of stuff. I ran down a litany of things that even she
Yeah.
might not have known. And so she goes, I am aware of all the things that Ari's done. And I was like, okay, well, you know. And she's like, yeah, but I'm still not going to vote for him.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, it helps you understand that, sometimes you got a vision and no matter what your vision is and the plan is, some people aren't going to be down with that vision and you move on. That's one key thing that I've learned from this. And I
Yeah.
talked about this on last week to the Lakewood Leadership Academy is that you'll come up across obstacles
Yep.
during this plan and path for your life, but it's how you deal with it. Are you going to
Yep.
bounce back from it the next day? Or are you going to sit and cry in your soup? I think
Yeah.
Ari tried to cry in his soup one day, and we were like, all right. It was on a Tuesday. We were like, all right. Wednesday, everybody was like, all right, well, straighten up. It's time to get back.
Yeah.
What are we doing now? I'm
Yeah.
just bummed out. I don't want to know. I'm not going to do this. I don't know what's next. Like, suck
Yeah.
it up. Now we still got to keep going because that's what he would tell us for
Yeah.
2 years. I mean, I was out of work for literally 2 calendar years. That's what he told me.
Yeah.
And it's understanding, having people around you that's going to support you
Yeah.
through your low times and
Yeah.
just come through for you right away and get you and be with you and celebrate in the high times.
Yeah. I think when you go back to your 2 years in I think it was like 7 days or something. I went through this, was it the 5 or 7 stages of grief,
Of
right?
grief, yeah.
Of grief. And I was like, man, that shit is real, dude. Like, dude, it's real, but you come out stronger, right? Like I look back, my 4 years was amazing. I was in the city 2 weeks ago. I dropped off donuts, right? Because just because I'm not there doesn't mean I'm not still here, right? That's not because I'm not in the position doesn't mean I'm not still going to do what I normally do, right? I dropped off donuts and everybody in the city came out and it was cool. It's like on a Friday and I still see the crew and even like the public works kids, man. I see them working in front of the house, like, yo, Ari, what's up, dude? You need to come back. What are you doing? I'm like, "Ah, man, but 4 years, solid 4 years, made some great friends in the elected space ended as the mayor, and I was campaigning as the mayor. So can you imagine like losing as the mayor? But as one of those things where, I ended probably at the right point in time. I ended as the mayor versus ending as a council member, right? So it's like you end as the championship team, you ended up and I'm not saying you retire, but I'm saying you ended as the championship quarterback, right? Versus, oh, we ended and your team was just another team, right? So blessed enough, and then when one door closes, then numerous doors open, and I going down that trajectory now, and looking at different paths and career paths right now. But have some great opportunities in front of me right now that I'm pursuing. So it's all good, man. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you start really paying attention to this, you know, it's understanding the timing of things. You know, I remember the first OSG event. Our used to partner. He helped create this organization called OSG. They would do this huge food giveaway down in Long Beach, and so Helping Hands Giving Hope, one of our first drop offs is down at the Samoan Church in Long Beach. We
Yeah.
show up with like 200 bags of stuff that we had packed to give out to folks,
Yeah.
and it really gave me an understanding. And it was like that the night before that was our first meal drop off. We did
Yeah.
10. I don't even think you probably didn't even know that we did 10 meals. That was the start of kind of our
Yeah.
Thanksgiving food giveaway.
I remember.
Um, and we did 10 meals and gave away 10 meals then. And then, to see kind of what you had created just off of, you and your buddies wanting to do something.
Yeah.
That's the message and I tell people this all the time. And Jen Garcia talked about it, that if you have an idea, if someone asked me this at the Lakewood Leadership Academy last week, they were like, where do we start? I was like, just start somewhere.
Yeah.
That's simple as I can say it. If you got an idea, start somewhere. You're not going to
Yeah.
end up with nothing. My buddy
Yep.
Tito, the hood Santa, we were talking about it last week because he had his 3,000 backpack giveaway, and so
Mhm.
he was telling us, he was like, "I had a plan to give away 100 backpacks." He was like, "We had nothing." He said,
Yeah.
"I had to drive around and buy 13," and I was like, "They had nothing." And
Yeah.
then you look at it from then to now. We did so. I mean, you see kind of the ideas that you have, and kind of some of the stuff that Ari's had. With talk about some of the more outside of the box initiatives,
Yeah.
that you've had over the last few years.
Oh gosh. I mean, there's so many, I mean, I gosh, I can't even, I don't even know where to start on outside of the box. I mean, I think I mean, whether it's an idea or not, an idea of executing an idea, I think it's when you sit on boards and when you sit in groups of people, just getting them to see your perspective, just to spark interest, to kind of like, because people kind of see kind of like in tunnel vision, they see their way, but to listen to someone else's perspective is always one thing to like challenge yourself to be open-minded, because I mean, we're all hard-headed, but sometimes when you're open-minded, the game changes. So like for me, I love to like push the envelope and outside of the box thinking, like the whole like like the Lakewood Leadership Academy. It's never been done, but there's other cities that do some type of leadership academy that was very in depth. Mine was more of just like, let's just get people in the room and have some cool conversations. But in these other academies, are very public policy and city and this. Ours is very like, let's look at history, let's look at building teams, look at like nonverbal communication, let's get some like rad speakers that are completely separate from the industry. Let's hear from like, I mean, we had Steve Van Dorn from Vans come in, and we had Brandon Ball from Starch Creative come in, which is all the merchandising for all the big brands, which is a good buddy of mine. So it was such a um, it was so it wasn't it was so it was so far end from each other, but in the end, it was about giving somebody something to think about that was not so on the road. Like if you talk about like the city and public policy, okay, you're gonna city public policy, you're gonna talk about like legislation, you're gonna talk about like rules and. But if you go to like history, then you go to like shoe history of Vans, an iconic brand in the city of in the state of California. And then now it's global, and then you go back to like understanding water and how it works in the city of Lakewood and how we have all these aquifers and how you can drink out of the hoses in Lakewood. And then you go to somebody that does merchandising for like Adidas, Vans, Nike, Live Golf, all the other. And so we were able to kind of get everybody to kind of like ping back and forth. I'm like, whoa, yeah, cool. Like, oh man. And then their startup or their upbringing was kind of like the same way. Like, and they can reflect, right? They can see both sides of the spectrum, right? It wasn't about like guiding somebody. It was about exposing them, right?
We last week at the Lakewood Leadership Academy, we talked about your idea of the farmers market, the Lakewood family market,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was interesting, guys, because the Lakewood Leadership Academy, the interesting thing last week is that they had me, who like I have like a grassroots organization that like we created, And
Okay.
then we had, another guy, he's the executive director of one of the greatest YMCA's around. And so you have two completely different people, but we both serve the community. And so we talked in detail about Ari's idea. Ari had this idea of us doing a farmer's market in the YMCA parking lot. And it was interesting because I think during that time when we started it, it was towards COVID had just started dying down a bit. And so, I had just become chairman of the board. And, look, I'm pretty open to everything. But when they came up with this idea, I was like, that ish is going to fail. Like, that sounds crazy. And I think the first time out, we had like 14 people signed up. Because I walked up to every 14 people and checked their in. How you doing? I'm Shannon Stewart, board chair of the
Yeah.
Lakewood Y. If you need anything, let me know.
Yeah.
The next week, we had 23.
Yep.
Next week, we had 30.
Yep.
Next week, we had 48.
Yeah.
And then after that, we had more than that where we had to open up and doing it again on a Sunday.
Hmm.
I mean, it was crazy. But again, this
Yeah.
is a kind of outside of the box thinking you come up
Yeah.
with to impact your neighborhood and your community.
And I think the basis of that conversation was, how do we market the YMCA to a broader audience? Because the standard was being done. So when I was thinking about this, I'm like, man, I go, what's happening on Friday nights? So like nothing, right? Nothing happens on Friday nights. All right, we got to do something Friday nights. Let's bring something to Friday nights there, and let's get them to ideally come to the farmers market, then give tours to the YMCA, get them coming in and out, and then get the basketball kids to come out and spend money here. And then, I mean, it just that was the whole premise of that was to like, really capture an audience that would drive down, that high thoroughfare of Carson and Woodruff, right? That on a Friday evening and see all the buzz going on in the corner, and that parking lot gets pretty heavy on the weekends too. So it was really to kind of like open the scope of marketing, but from a different lens and idea because the ads, the Instagram, the deals, it's cool, but we have to always keep our wheels turning and kind of staying on our toes. And then, I mean, gosh, I mean, Juju Schuster came out of that, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The
So, I
relationship
mean,
that we have with Juju Smith Schuster and the Flag
yeah,
Football League came out of that.
yeah. So, and that was a win for all of us. Right. So, yeah, I just,
You know, Ari, I was thinking about this, and as we start winding down, I want you to talk to people about this because a lot of people have fear in stepping out and doing what's next. Why don't you talk to them about your what's next and how you're overcoming the fear of the dealing with what's next?
well, I mean, it's always like in athletics, right? It's pressure, right? Like when your back's against the wall, you got to make a decision. You got to make it now, right? And sometimes it's not fear. It's just you're just we get so comfortable in our space, which is okay. But sometimes if you don't challenge yourself every day or daily, I mean, then you're never going to get to the next level. And you always hear people tell us that, right? But when I also look back on like when you talk about fear and you're back against the wall, you got to make stuff happen, you got to find a job, you got to make the sale, whatever it may be. In the end, if you have integrity and authenticity as a person and people can see you, not see right through you, that's like one of the biggest things that I'm definitely behind is because when you talk about integrity, like we know with like social media right now, it's crazy, man. I mean, it's all this false smoke and mirrors in front of everybody and the selfies and getting in front of everybody, it's cool, but make a difference, lay a foundation, dude, dig a hole, like lay the roots, dude, like let's get some real relationships, so I think, being comfortable being uncomfortable is a good one. I mean, we can tell all of them and make these comparisons all day long, but it's one of those things where I think, when I boil everything down to see how far I've gotten with like whether it's your friends, your family, and whatever it may be, it's about integrity, man, and authenticity. And if you have that and you're real as real, and you have the respect. It's almost like gang terms. You got the respect from your homies. You got the respect from the community. Like that goes deep because that's where the doors open, right? That's how I became part of everything is because people, let's call Ari, he'll help us out. I'm like, all right, let's go. We'll do this. And you bring it, right? But you have to bring it. It's okay to get somewhere and be like, okay, I'm here, and then just take a seat. No, get there and bring it, right? So yeah, so I think when you look back, as we talk about this, it's 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 being comfortable, being uncomfortable is okay.
And when Ari says bring it, he doesn't mean just bring yourself.
No.
Like you really have to come and be prepared to bring the best you that you have.
Yeah.
I talk to people about this all the time. Is that a few weeks ago I had a chance to speak to our Y ACES group, and so they are after-school community leaders that deal with all the schools in Long Beach. And so it was 150 kids are ranging in from, and I shouldn't say kids because they were ranging from ages like 25 to like 50,
Mhm.
right? And that was one of the questions. Like, what do I do next? Like, how do I know what's next? Your what's next is whatever what's next. Like, you
Yeah.
can't plan for everything. You don't want to have um, paralysis by analysis, not knowing what you're going to do or how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
When Ari talked to me about helping hands, giving hope, and a lot of the stuff we do now, it's just going out, putting one foot in front of the other, and trusting God to work the rest of it out. I tell people this all the time, and Ari will attest to this. There is a faith component to all of this. Like there is if I asked a lady a couple of days ago, I went and sat down next to her at the Lakewood Leadership, and so she had wrote down a dream of hers, and I asked her, did she have a bigger dream? And she goes, well, yeah. I said, well, why do you didn't write that down? And she was like, well, I didn't know how I would accomplish it. And I was like, well, then that's not a dream then.
Yeah.
Like you really need something that's big enough that's going to scare you enough to ask for help, guidance, and direction from others that have come before you.
Yep.
And again, the worst they can say is no. I mean, and I've become very comfortable with people saying no, because they're not saying no to me. They may be saying no to the fact that they don't believe homeless care is important. They don't believe their city has a homeless issue. Okay. When people say no to the YMCA, I ask them, you don't like kids? Like
Yeah.
I say that on an auction stage. You don't like kids?
No.
If you say no, all right, understandable. This
Yeah.
guy don't like kids.
Yep.
But be willing to step outside of your comfort zone. Be willing to step outside the box and be willing to think bigger than what you're thinking.
Yep.
So Ari, tell the people what's next for you. What are you
Um,
doing now?
what I'm doing now is after coming off a loss in election, I was blessed. A week later, after the election was ratified, I was appointed to a board commission by Supervisor Janice Hahn. Thanked her for that. And then right after a week and a half after
Wait.
that,
You said a week later. Tell him.
yeah, a week later, yeah, right
And and,
after
and pointed by the supervisor. Tell the
Janice
people
Hahn,
the county supervisor.
yeah, the county supervisor.
Los
Yeah.
Angeles is the largest county in the country.
Yeah, so I got appointed a week later after that, and then a week and a half. Well, on top of that week, I had a week and a half after that. I got picked up by Rojas Public Affairs. So I work for a public affairs governmental relations firm now. So my job is still in the elected space, but versus in the city, we did a lot of policy, ran the city and legislation. So in my role now, we look at legislation, but we're in the business of chasing federal and state earmarks for a lot of municipalities. We do special districts and we do trades and associations. So we cover governmental relations, public affairs, and stakeholder outreach. So it's pretty cool. Busy. Good
So
times.
Ari, as we wrap up, the goal of the road trip is to enrich, encourage, and empower.
Yep.
As you leave people today, what's the one piece of advice, unsolicited, that you would give people that are looking to take their next big step in life?
Hmm. Here we go. Happiness is a journey, not a destination. Stay true to yourself, have integrity, and be authentic. Have people see you, not through you.
Dang, that's a good one. He said, "Have people see you, not through you."
Yeah.
Hey, well, that's it, y'all. Look, I told you I would be bringing some heat to you, and we brought the best. So
Yeah.
I want to thank Ari for taking the time out of his
Appreciate you,
extremely
man.
busy schedule to come and hang out with us on the road
Yeah.
trip.
Yeah.
And stay tuned, guys. I want to thank you for watching. As always, I'm Shannon. I love you. God loves you. Until we speak again, keep living in victory.
In victory.